Language, Perception, and Stereotypes by Lauren Tobar and Sylvia Mendez.
Our scope of an investigation is to see to what extent does language influence how people perceive others.
A real-life situation, being labeled as something that isn't necessarily true and being treated a certain way because of the label.
Stereotypes
Is defined as a social perception of an individual in terms of group membership or physical attributes.
The formation of stereotypes can be formed through the gatekeepers, which are the media, parents, and other members of the culture.
Stereotypes could also be formed through illusory correlation. That is when people see a relationship between two variables even when there is none. And that is when stereotypes are formed.
Another way stereotypes are formed is through confirmation bias. And this is where people overlook information that contradicts what they already believe, and they only pay attention to the behaviors that only confirm what they believe.
This ties into schemas. They are concepts or mental representations of knowledge. They provide guidelines for when people try to make sense of the world. Schemas create expectations for specific situations we encounter every day in life.
People tend to focus on information that does agree with their schemas, and this may lead to confirmation bias.
An example of this in real life is in high school,
where people tend to form cliques or groups from physical attributions or other distinguishing factors.
Here, this map is going to be your guide to North Shore. Now, where you sit in the cafeteria is crucial because you got everybody there. You got your freshmen, ROTC guys, preps, JV jocks, Asian nerds, cool Asians, varsity jocks, unfriendly black hotties, girls who eat their feelings, girls who don't eat anything, desperate wannabes, burnouts, sexually active bandies, the greatest people you will ever meet, and the worst. Beware of the plastic.
With this example, you can see that every group is classified by their characteristics. For example, all jocks sat at the same table.
These are schemas of what we expect from the typical groups in the high school setting, because there are certain groups that people are categorized in because of what their physical attributes are and their activities.
This creates an illusory correlation about how people are in these specific groups.
For example, in the video, it shows that all of the heavier girls sat together and were eating their feelings, but in reality, most heavy girls don't hang out with one another in the same group, and they don't eat because of their feelings.
But they could eat because they like food or have a medical condition. But we assume that they eat because they have an emotional issue or because it's their choice not to be healthy. This is also an example of a schema where people correlate being heavier to eating their feelings, because there must have been someone who was eating their feelings and they assume that all heavier people eat their feelings and that's why they're like that. And it's not because of some other factor. So they correlate these two variables and create a schema, and now they label everyone who is heavy as someone who eats their feelings, but in reality it could be something else.
In and out groups were also seen with this example because the people describing the different types of groups were labeling them such as Asian nerds, plastic, desperate wannabes, and burnouts. They tried to make all of those groups be portrayed negatively because they were the out groups and not as special as them, because they thought of themselves as the in group and showed favoritism toward themselves by stating that they were the greatest people you'd ever meet.
You're wearing it.
You're nauseating.
What's that?
Sushi.
Sushi?
Rice, raw fish, and seaweed.
You won't accept a guy's tongue in your mouth and you're gonna eat that?
Can I eat?
I don't know. Give it a try. What's your problem? What are we having? Just your standard regular lunch, I guess. Milk? Soup. That's apple juice. I can read. PB&J with the crusts cut off. Well, Brian, this is a very nutritious lunch.
In the Breakfast Club, typical stereotypes of people are being portrayed. The rich girl has sushi for lunch.
This is a representation of how others perceive her. Her lunch is exotic and only attributed to people with money because not everybody has this for lunch regularly.
The jock has a big lunch because the stereotype is that people who are athletic eat excessive amounts of food because they need the energy and protein and they burn large amounts of calories.
However, in reality, not all jocks eat a pile of sandwiches, a bag full of chips, and a bag of donuts. The basket case is perceived as odd by the others as she creates her wacky lunch.
Her sandwich is associated with her group because it's as unusual as others perceive her and her actions.
The nerd's lunch has all the basic food groups, meaning that he himself is a complete yet boring square. He has all the quality adults would want in a person but lacks the imagination.
Finally, the criminal has no lunch. This portrays the meaning that he has no one to care about and has no one looking out for him.
The absence of this lunch also signifies he wants to be portrayed as a nonchalant cool kid.
In Snow White, Snow White is shown cleaning and cooking for the seven dwarfs as a condition to stay with them and be protected from the huntsmen.
This signifies that women should be the man's caretaker by portraying her as their maid.
It shows that she is very dependent on these men because she needs protection and shelter.
This clearly exhibits the gender roles set up in our society. Women have always been the ones who stay at home to clean, cook, and look after the men.
While men are seen as the ones who go out and provide the family with their necessities by working and protecting.
This is a stereotype that suggests that women are defenseless while men are the dominant figures.
However, this stereotype is incorrect because nowadays many women are working alongside men, providing for the family as well.
In addition, some men are now the ones taking on the caretaker role instead of the woman.
In Sleeping Beauty, the main character, Aurora, is portrayed as a helpless woman in need of her Prince Charming.
After she falls in an eternal slumber, she is completely dependent on the man to come and save her.
She can't fight for herself or defend herself against the witch because she is completely helpless and unable to do this.
Also, her fairies are unable to defeat the witch when she turns into a dragon, despite their magical powers.
The man has to fight the evil witch with minimal help from the fairies.
The good females are the fairies and Princess Aurora. They let the man protect them and are very dependent on the prince.
The bad female is the evil witch because she is very independent and does not rely on men for protection.
This type of behavior is not acceptable in society. This is why she is labeled as evil for not needing a man to provide for her.
This ties into the stereotype of gender roles, where the woman is in need and caretaker of the man, while the man is the provider of protection. An example of how people have labeled or stereotyped others in history is when Pearl Harbor occurred during World War II.
Generally, what happened is that the Japanese did an aerial attack on the U.S. Navy base in Hawaii.
They completely destroyed the base by dropping bombs on them and killing thousands of people.
After this event happened, the U.S. saw all Japanese people as terrorists.
This created a label for all Japanese people. Anyone who looked as if they were Japanese would be labeled as terrorists and sent to the concentration camps.
Even the U.S. citizens who weren't involved at all with what Japan did but looked Japanese were labeled as the same thing and also discriminated against and sent to the camps.
This happened because American people associated Japanese with terrorism and created a stereotype for the whole racial group as their enemies. Our real life situation is that people form cliques or groups in high school that they follow.
For example, all the popular kids hang out together. They all look similar and are portrayed as fake people who only care about their appearances.
Another group is the nerds and geeks. They see themselves as superior to others because of their intelligence.
However, others see them as unsocial people who don't know how to have fun.
This relates back to in and out groups, where the group itself believes they're better and show favoritism towards themselves and perceive the other group negatively.
An example in our lives is the IB group believes they're smarter and better than the kids in regular classes.
They believe they are superior to others academically and refer to the kids in regular classes as the dumb or the regular kids.
While the regular kids perceive the IB kids as conceited nerds who have no lives and spend their afternoons doing nothing but homework.
They believe they have a better life than us because they don't work as much and feel pity towards us because we have to work all the time.
We have labeled each other by the behavior of individuals of these groups.
This happens because of the gatekeepers. They create a stereotype we accept and live through according to what is perceived by the media, literature, and historic events.
They help us create schemas of people by feeding us information about their views of each group.
This makes us create an idea about others and create expectations of how they are.
This is hasty generalization because we generalize ideas from insufficient evidence, meaning that we create a stereotype based on a few characteristics shown by an individual of the group.
The group will be labeled and feel the need to act according to their expectation, and therefore this is the self-fulfilling prophecy.
All of our examples are post hoc, ergo prompter hoc, because people confuse causal connections and correlated to the whole group, creating labels about people. To answer the question, to what extent does language influence how people perceive others?
Language does play a role into creating these stereotypes and labels.
For this reason, language can deceive you because it distorts your perception of the world, making you unable to see reality.
For example, when a friend is trying to describe a person for you, a schema is forming in your head with the limited information they are telling you using language.
When meeting this person, you have already labeled them accordingly to what you have been told about them.
Language is limited because one cannot completely and accurately describe someone with words.
This can change people's perceptions because you are only able to describe your own perception, thus creating a stereotype.
Dear Mr. Vernon, we accept the fact that we had to sacrifice a whole Saturday in detention for whatever it was we did wrong. But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. You see us as you want to see us. In the simplest terms, the most convenient definitions. But what we found out is that each one of us is a brain,
And an athlete. And a basket case. A princess.
and a criminal. Does that answer your question? Sincerely yours,